When you're trying to do something new and there's no map, the only choice you really have is to just start chugging ahead straight at that big obvious goal that you have in life. But you got to be prepared to shift. So there's a military historian named B.H. Liddell Hart, and he reviewed hundreds and hundreds of major battles throughout history. And what he found that only a fraction, and I'm talking like 6 or 8 out of like 300, were really won by head-on attacks. For the most part, the battles were won because of maneuvering and surprise and indirect approaches. A good example of this is George Washington. So we've kind of built a mythical proportions out of George Washington. The reality is he was severely outgunned, under resourced, and in order to be able to compete with the strongest naval and military power on earth at that time, he, instead of trying to focus on winning full frontal attacks, would have battles that were small actions like raids and feints and immediate withdrawals, and kind of that, like that Sun Tzu art of war, where he wanted to create the impression of constant pressure and control, but in reality there were just a lot of different pinpricks versus full frontal assaults. A good example of this is when he crossed the Delaware River on Christmas Day. The reality is we see pictures of this of mythical proportions, but he really just took over a group of mercenaries that were Germans, and it wasn't like a full-fledged like giant win and backbreaking to the British Army, but it was a huge event that gave a big impression. And if anything that George Washington was a master at, he knew how to decisively pick battles that would create huge lasting impressions. And sometimes when you're going ahead at something, you're going to have to shift into small, meaningful actions like building these relationships, having experiments, networking, getting this constant information updates, and letting these things compound into leverage over time. Perception and positioning is going to matter much more than just blunt, raw force. Meaning the path that you take and initially set out on isn't going to be the path that you stay on in order to be able to hit your goals. So I guess what I'm saying is if your current approach feels like a head-on attack, maybe it might be time to take a step back and think about taking the indirect path, because the reality is the long way might actually be the shortcut after all.